Imagine someone hands you a briefcase with $100 million in cash.
Okay, I'm listening.
Right. But the only condition is that you have to completely abandon your current living situation, your family, literally everything you know.
There's the catch. I mean, for 99.9% of humanity, you either take the money and run, or you completely agonize over the moral weight of that choice.
Exactly. But today we are unpacking a document claiming to have engineered a group of about 100 people who would look at that briefcase, feel absolutely nothing, and just walk away.
It sounds like an impossible psychological state, right?
Okay.
Because we are naturally wired for survival, for connection, and frankly, for resource gathering.
Yeah, totally.
But the text we are looking at today presents a blueprint for basically dismantling every single one of those biological and social drives.
So we are diving into a highly specific, very intense spiritual document from May 3rd, 2020. It is authored by someone named Shufeng.
Yeah, and it's titled The Realms That Chanyuan Celestials Have Achieved.
Right, which outlines the inner workings of an organization called Lifechanyuan. Now, before we really get into the weeds here, I want to make it crystal clear to you listening that we are stepping into this text purely as objective observers.
Yes, absolutely. We're not endorsing these viewpoints.
Not at all. And we aren't validating the claims either. Our mission for this deep dive is simply to unpack the fascinating psychological and structural claims the source material presents.
We just want to understand what this document actually says on paper. How this group supposedly operates.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the central tension of this document hits you in the very first few paragraphs.
Oh, it really does.
I mean, this isn't a religion or a group that wants everyone. It is an organization that proudly, almost defiantly, boasts about a brutal elimination rate.
Which challenges almost every baseline assumption we have about how a spiritual movement sustains itself.
Right, because most organizations use an expansion model. The doors are open. The goal is to bring in as many people as possible.
Yeah, you judge your success by your numbers. But this text presents the exact opposite. It outlines a steep, almost impossibly narrow funnel.
They don't celebrate how many people they have gathered. They actually celebrate how many people completely failed to make the cut.
Yeah, to understand their mindset, you really have to look at the statistics of their version of heaven. The author lays out the math very deliberately to establish this exclusivity.
Right. So the text states that back in 2009, there were over 2,000 members.
Who are referred to in the group as Chanyuan Celestials, by the way.
Yes, Chanyuan Celestials. But if you fast forward just over 10 years to 2020, that number has just plummeted. Only 444 remain.
Which is nearly an 80% drop-off.
In any normal corporate structure or even a mainstream community, a leader seeing those numbers would be hitting the panic button.
Oh, absolutely. But Shifeng doesn't stop there. He goes on to say that out of those remaining 444 people, at least half of them are, quote, unqualified.
Unqualified. So the text ultimately narrows it down to slightly more than 100 truly compliant individuals.
Exactly. Out of an initial 2,000 members, only 100 or so make it to the finish line.
The author calls this remaining fraction the ripe crops. Like they're the only ones actually ready to be harvested into the granary of the kingdom of heaven.
What's fascinating here is how they frame this. It's like an extreme spiritual boot camp or, I don't know, a brutal reality TV show elimination, but with eternal stakes.
I really struggle with the fundamental logic here, though. Just from a structural standpoint, how does an ideology survive when it actively tells its followers that 95% of them are going to fail?
Well, if I see a 95% failure rate on a product, I'm absolutely not signing up.
No, of course not. So how do they justify it?
You have to realize you're looking at it through a secular lens of efficiency. The author frames that massive failure rate as a universal truth. He calls it the epitome of the world.
The epitome of the world.
Okay. Yeah, the theological claim here is that entering heaven is, by its very nature, mathematically rare. It's reserved for this statistical anomaly.
So by parading this strict elimination mechanism, the group turns survival into the ultimate in-group validation.
Precisely. Instead of thinking the system is broken because everyone is leaving, the remaining members think Well, I am incredibly special because I am still here.
Wow. Okay. So if you are one of the few who survived a decade-long spiritual gauntlet where nearly 2,000 other people cracked under the pressure, your belief just becomes unbreakable.
Right, the high failure rate is the proof of the rigor of the truth. If everyone could do it, it wouldn't have any value to them.
So if 1,900 people broke under that pressure, the 100 who survived must have unlocked a completely different psychological baseline.
You would think so, yeah.
What exactly does the text say these survivors are capable of doing that normal humans just can't?
Well, the author outlines 8 specific realms or states of being that these ripe crops have achieved.
And as you read through them, I mean, it reads less like traditional enlightenment and more like a systematic shutdown of human psychology.
The progression of these 8 realms is wild because it systematically targets different layers of the human experience. It starts with the most primal one, which is survival.
Right. The first state they claim to have achieved is transcending life and death. The text says these celestials could die right now without any hesitation or fear.
They would supposedly face it joyfully,
Yeah, and they use this very specific metaphor. They view death as simply changing a car or a boat.
which is quite an image.
It is. But is that actual enlightenment or is it just severe psychological dissociation? I mean, it sounds like they've intentionally numbed their own biological survival instincts.
Well, the author would argue it is ultimate liberation,
Yeah.
but mechanically, you are absolutely describing a form of dissociation.
Like disconnecting entirely.
Yeah. I mean, if a vehicle breaks down, you don't mourn the vehicle, you just step out of it.
Yeah.
To view your own body that way requires stripping away millions of years of evolutionary hardwiring.
You basically have to intellectually and emotionally convince yourself that your physical form has zero intrinsic value beyond just its temporary utility.
Exactly, which perfectly sets up the second state, which is absolute immunity to temptation.
Ah, this is where the briefcase comes in.
Yes. The text specifically claims you could offer one of these individuals a $100 million bribe to leave their leader, Suofeng, and they would be completely indifferent.
Like money, power, fame, carnal pleasure, none of it moves the needle for them.
Notice how the first realm neutralized the fear of losing your life. Now, the second realm neutralizes the desire for anything within that life.
They're just dismantling the currency of human motivation.
Right. If money or physical pleasure doesn't trigger a dopamine response, you really can't be controlled by outside forces.
And then they sever the social controls in the third realm. They claim to be perfectly calm in the face of both favor and disgrace.
So you could throw a parade in their honor or scream insults in their face, and they just flatline emotionally.
It's like they've surgically removed the dopamine receptors for social connection.
Yeah, if you don't feel the high of being loved or the sting of a literal insult, you aren't just meditating through social anxiety.
Yeah.
You have severed the social nerve entirely.
That is a terrifying but highly accurate way to frame it, because the entire social contract of human civilization relies on our shared desire for favor and our shared fear of disgrace.
That is exactly how communities regulate behavior.
Yeah.
By removing that, the individual becomes completely untethered from the societal web.
And that untethering just goes into overdrive in the fourth state. Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a bit baffling.
Oh, absolutely.
The text claims these individuals own absolutely nothing. No tangible material things and no intangible things, but it goes further.
Much further.
It says they have no relatives, no enemies, and no lovers. It describes this as an ethereal and beautiful state of being one with the Tao.
This raises an important question, though.
Hmm.
What does being one with the Tao actually mean in this specific context?
Wait, before we go further, let's clarify that. For someone listening who isn't steeped in Eastern philosophy, what is the Tao here?
Well, in traditional philosophy, the Tao, or the Way, refers to the fundamental, undifferentiated flow of the universe.
It's like the natural order of things.
Exactly, before humans impose their labels, desires, and instructions onto it. So to be one with the Tao means flowing with reality without resisting it or trying to possess any part of it.
I see the philosophical appeal, sure, but I really have to push back on the reality of it.
Go for it.
If you have literally no ties to anyone, no family, no partner, no possessions, and as the fifth state mentions, absolutely no desires, what actually gets you out of bed in the morning?
That is the million-dollar question.
Is this an ethereal and beautiful state, or is it just a conscious coma?
Yeah.
You aren't getting up to feed your kids, or pursue a passion, or even just to enjoy a cup of coffee.
It really raises a profound question about the line between enlightenment and total depersonalization.
Yeah, depersonalization, exactly.
Because what the text describes here is a state of inaction. If you have severed all emotional ties, so no love, no hate, no familial obligation, you have effectively removed the engine that drives human behavior.
You are no longer an active participant in the human drama. You are just simply an observer.
And the way they observe the world is deeply unsettling. Which brings us to the sixth state.
Right, the one that claims they have no dualistic thinking, they never argue, they don't comment on who is right or who is wrong.
The text says they have entered a holographic state of non-form thinking.
Okay, pause. Holographic. When I hear that, I immediately picture a 3D projection in a sci-fi movie. What does holographic actually mean when we are talking about a spiritual state of mind?
It is a really dense term. So dualistic thinking is how we normally navigate the world, right? Categorizing things as good versus bad, safe versus dangerous, true versus false.
We chop reality up into distinct, separate parts.
Exactly. Non-form thinking suggests completely abandoning those categories. The word holographic here means experiencing reality where every single piece contains the whole.
Okay, I think I follow.
You don't see separate conflicting parts. You just see a single, unbroken image.
So it's like looking at a painting. You don't judge the red paint against the blue paint, you just take in the entire picture.
That's a great analogy, yeah. But apply that to human morality. If you abandon dualistic thinking entirely, you abandon all judgment.
Wow. So if someone is being actively harmed in front of you, dualistic thinking says, that is wrong, I should intervene.
But holographic, non-form thinking simply observes the event as a natural expression of the universe, without assigning any moral weight to it whatsoever.
That paints a terrifying picture. If you don't judge right from wrong, you could watch a tragedy unfold and just feel absolutely nothing. You are entirely passive.
Passive, yes, but perfectly insulated from suffering, which leads right to the final two realms.
Okay, the seventh state is remaining perfectly calm and unrestrained in adversity or danger.
And the eighth is never complaining, comparing, or envying, but blooming with the nature of Tathagata and being full of infinite vitality.
Let's quickly define nature of Tathagata for the listener.
Sure, Tathagata is a Buddhist concept, often used as a title for the Buddha himself. It translates roughly to one who has thus come or one who has thus gone.
Okay.
To have the nature of Tathagata basically means to perceive ultimate reality exactly as it is, without any of the illusions or projections that normal human minds create.
So when we synthesize all 8 of these realms, we are looking at roughly 100 people who allegedly don't fear death, don't care about $100 million, have cut ties with their families, have no lovers.
No desires, hold no opinions on right and wrong, and never complain.
It's wild. And Suefeng explicitly notes that these teachings, which are borrowed from Jesus, Buddha, and Lao Tzu, are very easy to understand intellectually.
Right, but they are, in his words, next to impossible to live.
Which brings up the most mechanical, practical question of this entire deep dive. If these states are nearly impossible for a human being to sustain, how does the text claim this group actually achieved it?
And not just achieved it, but did so in roughly a single decade.
Yeah. The answer the text provides is a complete rejection of everything you would expect.
It really is. Think about how many self-help podcasts, mindfulness apps, or meditation guides you have on your phone right now.
Or just the modern wellness industry in general, the yoga retreats, the daily journaling. This text explicitly mocks all of that.
Suefeng claims they found the core of self-improvement by figuring out what not to do. The list of rejected practices is incredibly revealing.
Yeah, they did not waste time chanting scriptures, they didn't cast spells, they didn't practice sitting in meditation.
They actively avoided preaching, debating, and trying to understand obscure spiritual concepts.
They even explicitly ignored current events and natural changes, viewing them as just fleeting clouds.
And the most relatable part, they did not waste time reading a vast sea of chicken soup for the soul.
The author literally uses that phrase, vast sea of chicken soup for the soul.
So what does this all mean? Well, we have a highly extreme spiritual group that is throwing out the very practices, like reading scripture and meditating, that usually define what a spiritual movement even is.
Right. How do you reach enlightenment without meditating?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's by recognizing that traditional practices are primarily internal and solitary.
You mean like you read a book, you reflect, you try to slowly change your perspective over a lifetime while still living in the normal world.
Exactly. Suefeng argues that this individualistic approach is profoundly inefficient. It fails because your environment is constantly working against you.
Oh, right. You can't just meditate away the stress of a mortgage while you still have to physically pay that mortgage every single month.
Yes, exactly.
You can't achieve a state of having no family attachments if you are going home to your family every night. The environment constantly pulls you back into dualistic thinking.
So the mechanical engine they used for 10 years consisted of 3 strict actions. First, they repaid their debts and severed their secular ties.
Okay, severing secular ties.
Second, they accumulated merits and treasures in heaven. And third, which is the crucial mechanism here, they perfected their life's non-material structure through collective living.
Perfected their life's non-material structure through collective living. Let's connect that to severing secular ties, because those two things are the actual life hack here.
Oh, absolutely. The secret wasn't finding inner peace alone in a room. The secret was complete and total environmental control.
Wow, you don't need to practice resisting the temptation of money if you physically remove yourself to a collective where money literally no longer exists or functions.
Right. You don't need to suppress the urge to argue with your enemies if you've severed ties with everyone you've ever known and moved into an isolated ecosystem where arguing is strictly forbidden.
It is enforced enlightenment. They artificially smoothed out the friction of normal human interaction.
You aren't individually choosing detachment every morning. You've just locked yourself inside a system where attachment is structurally impossible.
And we cannot overstate the psychological reality distortion field that this kind of absolute collective living creates.
When a closed group of people all agree to enforce these extreme behaviors around the clock, the peer pressure becomes inescapable.
Your non-material structure, essentially your very identity, is molded heavily by the collective.
Which completely explains the 95% failure rate we talked about earlier.
Right. The 1,900 people who left were the ones who couldn't handle having their individual identities ground down by that peer pressure.
And 100 who stayed were the ones who successfully allowed the collective environment to completely overwrite their human programming.
And that survival is what leads to the ultimate historical claim the author makes at the conclusion of the document.
Yes, Sui Feng doesn't just present this as a neat little sociological experiment. He asserts with immense pride that these remaining Chanyuan celestials have achieved something totally unprecedented in the history of the world.
The text states that these roughly 100 people have stood at a higher realm of life than any other people throughout all of human history.
Because, according to the author, they are the only ones who have ever achieved this highest state of being collectively, as a group.
Sui Feng calls it a miracle, a feat, and more than a myth.
It is the absolute logical endpoint of their theology. I mean, if the path to heaven is statistically narrow and individual meditation is a waste of time, then their brutal, decade-long collective isolation is the only valid mechanism for spiritual evolution.
So to synthesize this entire journey for you listening, we started by looking at a massive, unforgiving funnel.
An organization that began with over 2,000 members and actively whittled itself down to a highly exclusive group of 100 ripe crops.
These are people who claim to view their own death as casually as changing a broken car. They would reject a $100 million briefcase without a single second thought.
And they reached this state not by reading Chicken Soup for the Soul or meditating on a mountaintop, but by aggressively severing every worldly tie.
They surrendered entirely to the psychological pressure cooker of collective living.
It really is a remarkable documentation of how far human behavior can be altered when an ideology demands absolute detachment in exchange for an exclusive guarantee of salvation.
It truly is. But it leaves us with something critical to think about regarding our own lives, outside of this extreme group.
It does, and I want to leave you with a different angle to ponder as you step back into your day.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've been discussing how this group used radical isolation and a heavily controlled environment to erase all human friction. No arguments, no diverse opinions, no desires.
Right.
But consider how our modern world works right now.
How so?
Well, we're constantly curating our own digital feeds, we block opinions we don't like, we cancel people who offend us, and we isolate ourselves into highly specific ideological echo chambers where everyone agrees with us.
Oh, wow.
We are terrified of friction. So the question is, are we, in our own secular digital way, accidentally building the exact same collective reality distortion fields that this text praises?
That is a haunting thought.
Right. And if we eventually succeed in curating a totally friction-free existence, What parts of our own humanity are we quietly erasing in the process?
Are we seeking enlightenment, or are we just trying to build an algorithm that never challenges us? It is a fascinating question to end on.
It really is.
Thank you for joining us as we unpack the complex realms of the Chanyuan celestials. We'll be back next time to dive deep into another stack of sources. Until then, keep asking questions.